Hi, I'm Dave Ingebretson. Leroy Hyatt and I would like to welcome you to another edition of Fly Tying, the Angler's Art. And as usual, we've got a wide range of flies we're going to tie. We're going to start out with a very old-time favorite, the Zug Bug Nymph, and then we'll tie the ever-popular Muddler Minnow, and we'll finish up with a newer pattern, the Madam X. What are we going to do to tie the Zug Bug?
Well, Zug Bug, very simple little pattern, works in both lakes and in streams. You can weighted or unweighted. For the tail material, we'll use the peacock sword. I'll rib it with an oval silver tinsel. Now, you can also use flat, but I prefer the oval. The body material will be from the peacock stem itself, not from the eye section, but just from the regular herl. The wing case will be a mallard breast feather, and I'll use the standard 6/0 thread.
So what hook have we got in there?
Right now I have a 2X long, size 10.
But they tie this fly in a wide range of sizes, don't they?
From 8 to 18.
Yeah.
I've seen it listed that way several times. I'll come back to the bend of the hook, and then we'll take 4 or 5 sections, 3 or 4 sections of this peacock sword, just depending on the size hook you're tying of how many of the swords you want in.
That sword's nice material.
It is.
It's got a good effect to it, and a shimmery
good color.
Of course, any fly with peacock in, I think, is a good fly.
Hard to beat.
It's got that
multiple color
gloss and the multiple colors. And,
I'll just get these as even as I can. I don't want it tied in real long.
You know, I might mention, have you ever tied a fly with using the body of sword feather?
No, I never have.
If you do that, you get kind of a quill with a built-in rib.
Huh.
And try it sometime just for fun on a regular little nymph. Take a long sword and experiment with it a bit, and you get a real nice quill body with a built-in peacock rib. It looks pretty good.
Now, I've tied the rib in. I'm going to go ahead and put just a light coating of this rubber-based cement on it, and we'll spin that peacock herl right into that. And I'll come back here to the back, and I'll take 4 or 5 sections of this peacock. This is not a real long fly, but
you know, taking multiple sections and then twisting it around the thread is really helpful these days because so many of the peacock herls are so sparse.
Oh, very sparse,
and
yes.
very thin. And this way you can build up a nice piece of peacock chenille or peacock rope. And
much more durable.
You know, in the old days we used to take one herl and wrap it.
I know.
But you just don't do that anymore.
You don't find that kind of herl anymore.
I don't know what's happened to all the peacocks. They've kind of gone downhill, I guess.
Now, also, this fly could be weighted if you desired to do that. Again, we won't do it for sake of time here. Now I'll just start around. Just build a nice, smooth, little flat body. Go back over that one little section. And it does make a very nice looking body. It will give a very good impressionistic of several
different... But, you know, those were pretty lousy herls you used, and see how nice and thick the body is.
Well, it stood up pretty well.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to reverse wrap this oval, or this silver tinsel. Give it just a little bit different appearance. Keep them as close to, as even wrap as you can.
Now, one thing people have to be aware of when they counter wrap with the rib is when you put on the thread in the other direction, it's going to want to loosen up that rib. So you want to keep tension on the rib until it's well bound down before you clip it off.
Now, one thing I left off of this fly, forgot to lay out, was a piece of brown saddle that we'll use for the leg material. So I'll just grab one here and tie it in now. And I'll just take a couple of quick wraps with that.
So people that are taking notes at home, they'll want to add that brown saddle.
Add that brown saddle. I just neglected to lay it out. Then I'll come in and clip this down.
You know, at your age, I suppose the memory is probably the first thing to go, isn't it?
Yes. Well, it's something else, but I forgot. Then we'll use the mallard breast for the wing case. And again, I'll leave this longer than I really want it to be, and that way it'll let me pull it through. This is also trimmed when you get all through with it, get it laid on top. They trim this off flat and short. Now I have also, for this fly, instead of using the mallard breast like this, I have used white poly yarn and clipped it off. And it does make a very nice looking. I'll just come in here.
You could even use a light marabou, a little plume of marabou on a variety of things.
And just clip it off straight.
But this is the original pattern, at any rate.
This is the original. Now we'll go ahead and put a small whip on it. Get rid of that thread. And it's ready for some head cement. And
again, we'll say it's just a good searching nymph when you're not trying to represent anything in particular. It's really hard to beat a Zug Bug.
A lot of times on a lazy afternoon, you know, you're out kicking around a lake someplace in your tube or your kick boat. It's nice just to put one of these on and just go kick around, watch the scenery.
That's a pattern that belongs in any nymph fisherman's book.
Absolutely.
And lots of times that'll be the one that saves the day.
Well, there's the Zug Bug. Peacock sword tail, ribbed with flat or oval silver tinsel. The peacock body, legs of brown hackle. The wing case is mallard breast feather.
Well, Leroy, what can you say about the Muddler Minnow that hasn't already been said? Muddler Minnow is a super fly. It's originally developed by Dan Gapin up in the Nipigon country of Ontario for fishing brook trout. It's supposed to be, I guess, a sculpin minnow, but it can be fished dry, semi-dry, damp. It can be fished deep, and it's going to catch fish no matter how you
I normally like to fish the fly dry. I just don't particularly like to
in that case, it makes a good hopper imitation.
Excellent hopper.
Well, let's try it. What are you going to use?
For the standard Muddler Minnow, we're going to use just a regular, natural deer hair, a mottled turkey wing for the tail and wing section. The body will be a gold flat mylar tinsel. The underwing is gray squirrel tail. And there's just another section of the model that's a little more cut up than the other one. And then the standard dry fly thread.
Now, that last model, that was for the tail.
That was for the tail. Well, either one or.
Yeah.
I have a 4X long hook in the vise. I've pinched the barb. It's a size 8.
And again, you can tie this in a wide range of sizes.
A lot of different sizes.
And you mentioned you happen to use the word this is a standard muddler because there are a number of variations. One of which we've already tied on the show is the bloody muddler, which you created yourself. But there are a lot of variations and colors. And, this is the original.
Now, for the tail, I'm using just one section. Lay it on top, squeeze, pinch the barb or the hook and the material at the same time you're wrapping.
This is really critical, folks.
That will keep it right on top.
Tying with quill sections of duck or goose or turkey, whatever, you want to make sure that you don't twist it, that you don't have it folded or split. And you do that by making that loose loop on top, squeezing your thumb and finger tightly together and pulling straight down on your thread.
Yes.
And then the other trick is once you've made that first turn, you never again wind the thread to the good side of the material.
Right. Now what I've done when I trimmed that turkey wing or turkey tail off, I've left a little bit longer. That way it's not going to bulk up back here in the back so bad. It will give me more of a smoother transition.
This is particularly important because you're using a tinsel body.
Yes.
Now I suspect, knowing you, that you're going to do a single wrap body. I tend to go the other way, and I tend to double wrap it, start in front and go back and then forward again. But that's just really a matter of personal preference and what you like and what you're used to.
I fish the fly dry so often, I don't like that additional weight of that extra layer of tinsel.
Well, I never think about it because I've got all that deer hair in there and a lot of
you're
grease
probably
that keeps
right.
it up on top.
You're probably
The reason
right.
I like to double wrap it is because it closes any possible gaps in the material, and it just makes a very sturdy body.
Now I finished the body wrap, I tied it off, then I folded the mylar back over and captured it again. Just gives it a double locking point. Now for the under wing, I'll just take a small section of the gray squirrel, clip it off. I'm not even going to even this. The squirrel usually will come out fairly close.
Pretty even anyway. I never have
It's a little off, but not bad. And you can see the nice coloration. It's tan to black to white, and it does give a good color there. Get it tied in place. Take another wrap around it and then trim it at an angle. Now I'm not going to put that rubber-based cement in there yet until I get the turkey wing sections. Now this is a matched turkey, model turkey section, and you can see this is where I've taken the two matching quills out to make the wings. If you don't have the matching one, and by matching I mean there's an even amount of material on either side of the stem. That's what makes the matching set.
And they're shaped the same too.
It's shaped identical.
But sometimes you get a turkey wing feather. This is a wing feather, by the way, not a tail. And sometimes you get them where the shape on one side of the stem is different than the other, and in which case you use two matched feathers and you take it out of two different feathers so that the sections match.
Now that you can see, I've had the two together.
Put the concave sides together, the dull sides.
Dull side to dull side. Match the points, the tips as close as you can get them.
We might mention that these feathers and the tail has a natural curvature.
Going to the
and
down.
That most people tie it with that curve going back and down rather than back and up, with both the tail and the wing.
You could do it either way. I have seen it done both ways.
I have too. I think the original way was curved downward.
I prefer to have it down.
I think
That's
so.
just me.
Well, partly because you're imitating a minnow primarily, not a grasshopper or something, but this is a good hopper imitation too when you fish it dry.
And now I'm going to take just a little bit of rubber-based cement and just put a little bit of that in those butts. Then I'm going to hang on to this once more and just bind it all down good. That way I know it's not going to come loose. That squirrel is captured in there very nicely along with the wing. Now, we'll go with the deer here.
You'll notice too on this fly that the wing and the underwing and the tail all ended about the same place.
Now for the deer here, a lot of guys I've seen can do this. I never have any luck with it. I'll go ahead and stack this because it does need evened up. They'll put one larger section in there and just kind of divide it around. This will become the overwing, but I always have better luck if I do it in two sections. It seems like it fills in more. I'm going to make it about half the length of the tail of the wing section.
Yeah, you want some of that wing showing.
Absolutely, yes. So I'll clip it off with my measurement. I'm going to lay it on the opposite side myself, take a loose wrap, and pull tight.
So
I am
really
not going to let that
it.
spin. I'm not going to let that spin at all. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, on the side closest to me. Get rid of that under fur.
I think that's a good point. You know, a lot of people do spin that first bunch and use one large bunch, and
I don't have luck doing that.
It spoils the effect too, I think.
I have seen guys do it, but I've just never been that successful with it. Now here's the second bunch. I'm going to lay it up on my side and measure. I want it to come out about the same length as the first one. I'll clip it off, and I'll lay this on my side and tighten it down again. I am not going to let it spin. I'm going to go through it several times right here, and then I'm going to stand all these butts up and get my tying thread in front of them. That's where I want the rest of it to be. Now this next section, I do not even. I don't do anything with them except get the under fur out.
And I've got to say there's a wide variety of muddler heads.
Oh, lots.
Some people just sort of loosely have it around there, so it's a fairly loose head. Other people pack it to death and
real tight.
Clip it so it's a very solid, tight head. And I guess that's individual preferences.
Absolutely.
I think the original one was fairly loose, but we've gotten to be a little more creative now.
I'm going to leave the tips in here. I'm going to spin this section. I leave the tips in for a reason.
And pointing forward.
And pointing forward, over the eye of the hook. Now I have this section captured, but I'm going to go backwards into that first two clumps of hair that I put on. That will definitely marry those two sections together. Now the reason I leave those tips on, I can grab a hold of them now. It just basically becomes a little handle. Grab a hold.
I think that's a super trick, and again, I've said it before when you've done this, I've learned this from you, because the problem always is binding some of those darn
They'll always get in the way, seem like always in the way.
But this way, when you tie the points forward and fold it back, you've got lots of room there. It's very convenient to whip finish ahead, either by hand or with a whip finishing tool or with a half-hitch tool.
Either way. There it is. Now, I'm going to take it out of the vise, but I'm going to leave it right here. And I'm just going to trim it as best I can to a muddler head shape. And again, like you said, there are lots and lots of different muddler head shapes.
Some people taper it. Some people leave it level.
Some people like it very large.
Yeah.
I like to start with mine to have it almost perfectly round. And then you can kind of adjust it with what you want to do on the stream when you get there. And just trim it off.
I think if I ever get to the point where I have to adjust my muddlers on the stream, I'll start raising flowers or something.
Well, like if you tie it with a cone-shaped head, you can actually strip the muddler to you and it will sink. Relax it and it will bob back up to the surface. No, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time trimming on this. You can see where we are with that.
Speed it up.
But there's the muddler, the standard muddler as Don Gapin did it. That's quite a large head on there, but I'll guarantee that fly will float for a long time. Representative of many insects. It can be taken for hoppers. It can be taken for stoneflies. Lots and lots of different ones.
Very nice, and I really like the way you've got that collar so even around.
And that is the standard muddler. Has a model turkey tail and wing. It has a flat gold mylar tinsel body, underwing of gray squirrel, the collar and head with spun deer hair.
Well, now we've tied two really old patterns to most people. This next one, it's old to some of us here in the West, fairly old, but it may be a new pattern to those in other parts of the country. It's the Madam X, a very popular fly. It was developed by the very creative John Faust in Hamilton, Montana. Serves a variety of purposes. It can be a hopper or whatever, but or a minnow. Go ahead and tell us about it.
Okay, the tail will be a natural deer hair. The floss or the body will be a yellow floss. They'll have rubber legs on it. Now the rubber legs comes in strip like this. I've already stripped two off. You can see what they look like there. And the yellow thread for the tying thread.
What hook?
I have a standard dry fly hook. It's a size 10.
And again, this can be tied in a range of sizes, but
different sizes.
Probably 8s, 10s, and 12s are probably the most common.
Yeah, I'm sure it would be the most. Now for the tail, we'll use just a very little bit of this deer hair. Trouble with this, some of this deer hair, it has a tendency to want to flare bad on you, so you got to keep kind of a loose wrap on it. If you can find some good leg hair or something like that, it will
well, by
not
keeping
flare.
it fairly short, you get down to where it isn't quite as hollow either.
Not quite as bad, right. And I'm going to just very loose wrap over that till I get a good start on it, and then I'll go back over it and pull it tighter. Make a couple of more wraps there. Now I'm going to take the yellow floss. This is a 4-strand floss. It will just make it absolutely go faster. No real secret with that. You could use a single if you need to, if you want, if you're tying smaller. The single floss might be a little better for you to use there. Bring the tying thread up front, and then just start wrapping this yellow floss. Just build a nice smooth body.
And as we've said before, to keep that floss from fraying, it's probably a good idea to not to slide your fingers down it, but to grab it in one place and wrap, then take another grip somewhere else, but don't slide your fingers up and down.
Yeah, if your fingers are rough at all, it'll really fray it out.
Yeah, that's very nice. That's nice and smooth.
Now I'm going to take another section of this deer. I'm going to get rid of the under fur. This will be a little bit larger section than the one we just put on. I'm going to measure it. I'm not going to tie it on. All I'm going to do is measure. I want it to come back about halfway, maybe a little more so, than the tail section. Then I'm going to turn this around, and I'm going to clip, if I can get it situated in my hand, and get it clipped short. Now what I'm going to do is just lay this in there. I've got some stragglers sticking out there I can't get off.
All right, let's review that while you're trimming.
I'm trimming just
measured
about
it with the tips about as long as halfway back through the tail.
That's correct.
But you're tying it in now.
Opposite way, because I'm going to fold it over.
And
now I'm going to tie it in.
It's probably a good idea to have a little extra length because you are going to fold it.
A little bit.
And you'll lose some there.
Then I'm just going to spin it, let
You're
it go
letting
around
it spin
the hook.
around. Yeah.
Now I have a little tool. I'm going to take my thread back to where I finished the body. Just push this little tool on there and fold it back over.
Now, if you don't have the tool, that can be done with your fingers,
Ballpoint
or
pen.
you can make it get a little plastic soda straw, drinking straw.
Sure could.
That's what I use. Just cut an inch or inch and a half section, and use that to push this head back.
And then we'll put the rubber legs on. I'm not going to worry about the length of this at all.
Well, actually, it's probably a good idea to have those legs fairly long. You want some nice action
I do, yeah, but I'm just going to tie them in for now just to get them in place, and then I'll trim them all. Get that pulled down. I want the legs even as I can, so
I leave mine fairly long so they jiggle and wiggle out there.
Okay.
You can experiment with that, you know, tie some one way or some another.
And
that's
I'll just
probably
put a small whip
that's
finish
probably
here.
the way that most of them are tied.
Yes.
I sometimes leave them even longer than that.
Now I'm going to run that thread forward through that ball eye on there, come back to the front, and just put another little whip finish right there.
Well,
that
that's
thread will
interesting.
bind down into that deer hair, will not even be seen.
That's a good idea. I usually whip finish mine behind the head.
Well, there's a Madam X, deer hair tail, head and wing, yellow floss body, yellow thread, white rubber, round legs.
Why don't you rotate that a little bit so we can see it there? That's really the fish's view of it.
Put some head cement on as I go around.
Yeah.
But that does open that up real nice. Those round rubber legs just kick for all they're worth.
It's
Works
a
nice.
good searching fly.
Excellent searching fly.
If you're just fishing the water, whether you're floating or wading, if I don't see anything happening, it's a good attractor pattern.
It floats high. I'm
Still,
going to
it
do
looks
one
like
more
something alive. But it can also
here.
be used when the hoppers are on.
I want to go ahead and clip this bottom section off, and I'll turn that to the camera again. Now you can see that yellow body.
Yeah.
And that's the way
nice.
you want it
That's
for the
nice.
fish to see it.
I think it's a good point to note that if you're going to do that, you should put the head cement on those wraps first.
Yes.
And let it set up,
Yes.
because if you don't do that, you'll get the ends popping out.
Yes.
And then it'll be really shaggy.
And there's the Madam X.
You know, Leroy, we've said this before, but the only way to improve your fly tying is to be quite critical of the flies that you tie so that the next one can be a little better. And let's give them an example of that. Let's look at our muddler and maybe our Madam X and see if there are things that we could have improved a little bit.
Well, the muddler, there's too much hair left on the head. It needs to be trimmed down some. I'll just rotate this around and trim as I go.
I think that'd be my comment, is that maybe that head could be a little smaller. As we indicated, when you tie it, there's a great variability in heads, but usually maybe a little bit smaller than that. And
the only thing
make it
this
look
fly
even.
would do is float extremely high on the water with all that hollow deer.
But a nice little trim here. Let's move on to they can trim it now. Let's move on to the Madam X very quickly.
Okay.
And take a look at that.
Madam X, when we started, we said we wanted that wing to be about the same or half the length of the tail. I left it a little bit long when it folded over, and it's coming out about as long as the tail. Will not make any difference at all, but the next one I tied, I would make that over wing just a little bit shorter.
I think that's fair. Well, we've tied the Zug Bug, a good all-around nymph for any conditions anywhere. We've tied the Muddler Minnow, and again, we've said about all we can say about the Muddler Minnow. Great fly. And now this fly pattern, the Madam X, which is probably new to a lot of you. I'd suggest you play with it. It's a fun fly to tie and a fun fly to fish, and it's very, very effective. I was just up in British Columbia this summer, and that was the fly I started with, and I didn't have to change. Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh, it did very well for me.
And the legs
Good
really
fly.
kick hard. And
So get out there and tie some flies, and we'll see you in another week. And thanks a lot for looking in on us. So long.
Dave and Leroy have produced a new 90-minute video on fly tying techniques. To order a copy, call the number on your screen. These tips are only $28.95 plus $3.95 shipping and handling. Please have your credit card ready and call 1-800-883-0124 to order fly tying techniques. You can also order the programs in this series. There are 3 programs on each 90-minute tape for $22.95 plus shipping and handling. Call 1-800-883-0124 and order your fly tying videos or the Techniques tape.